Welcome to this session, which is personal branding on social media. I'm Neil Wilkins. This is a really interesting conversation to be had. If you are looking to develop your career, it is really a thing that is crucial for marketers, entrepreneurs, business owners, professionals at all different levels, whether you're kind of starting out or you are a seasoned professional. If you're aiming to expand your influence and drive a meaningful set of connections and network, then building a personal brand on social media is absolutely vital. It is almost your footprint, if you like, that goes before you and is the legacy that's left behind after you've encountered somebody in the real world. So it is absolutely vital that it's both consistent, motivating, engaging, and absolutely relevant to the messages and the kind of style that you're looking to convey to the world. So these will be some of the tips and strategies that we will be exploring as we go through this particular session today. So the first thing that you need to do, and this, I guess, probably isn't rocket science, but it is really, really vital, is to actually define what we mean by a personal brand. What are you? Who are you? What does it actually mean? I mean, identifying your niche, for example, and your, let's call it a unique value proposition. What sets you apart? What makes you different? What unique value do you bring to the world? This might be something that you are possibly unsure of, or that you maybe you've had mixed signals from the world. Maybe there's things that the world thinks that you are good at, or we'll be providing huge amounts of value for, but it isn't necessarily something that resonates for you. And consequently, you might love doing things and the world thinks, okay, whatever. So it's a really interesting thing to actually work with your personal brand. I'm going to be using, as we go through this talk, I'm going to be using a couple of examples of people who have very, very significant and very clear personal brands. That's Stephen Bartlett and Gary Vaynerchuk. Very different personalities, very different styles, and we'll see the nuances of that play out as we go through some of these examples. So in terms of defining a unique value proposition, Stephen Bartlett, for example, will very much be positioning himself as an introspective, nuanced business thought leader. So he's really kind of looking at a sort of a deep dive every time he interviews a guest or gives you a little snippet of information to consider. It will be based around a quiet, reflective kind of persona. So he is not really kind of out there. But really, by defining yourself and your personal brand and then thinking about your target audience, that's step number two, understanding actually who you want to reach and what's going to resonate with them. Things like their interests, their pain points, the challenges they have, maybe professionally and personally, and then seeing whether you've got an alignment. It's very unlikely that Stephen Bartlett and Gary Vee, for example, will be targeting absolutely the same audience, because Gary Vee, for example, he creates content, let's just say, at the intersection of business and pop culture, and reaches a very broad audience of go-getting entrepreneurs, people who are, literally taking the reins and driving business forward. Now, that's not to say that Stephen's audience are not doing similar, but it is a very different kind of alignment of the personal brand. Gary Vee is very much out there. He is speaking directly to people's challenges. He's giving practical advice. He's very upbeat. He's very kind of sharp, if you like, in terms of the way that he will give guidance. There's a lot of thought behind it, but it's a very, very different style. And that is something, for you to consider in terms of your own personal brand, not to be emulating these guys or anybody else necessarily. You have to find your own personal, unique style, and then think about the audience, think about who you're most likely to resonate with. And we'll see a little bit later how you can kind of measure how you're doing in that regard. Another thing as well then is to really think about your kind of voice and personality, the style that your brand is going to be consistently reflecting. And it needs to be, and this is so, so important, to be able to maintain some sustainable kind of connections with people and to be, in this for the long game, because you have to be, really. Your personal brand needs to be reflecting your authentic self. So things like your core values. What are your values? They could be very different to mine. They could be very similar. It doesn't really matter. It's basically, what are you about? What are your values? What do you stand for? What is most important to you? What expertise do you have? You don't necessarily have to be an expert, and that word is often sort of misused and misunderstood. Being a specialist, though, is something very different and very valuable. Your expertise will grow from being a specialist. And I often feel that, I would never say I'm an expert in anything. I specialize in things, but I would never claim to be an expert, even though in some areas people say, oh, Neil, you're an expert in this or an expert in that. I'm thinking, well, not really. I'm a specialist in it, but actually my personal brand values don't actually then claim to be an expert, because to me, you're kind of putting yourself on a pedestal ready to fall if you do that. So I think specialism is key. And from that specialism, you can figure out your unique value, the value that you will bring to your audience. Again, Stephen Bartlett, great example here, brings a very calm and sophisticated approach, you could say, to his content. He's known for being very authentic, very value driven. And a lot of his posts that you will see consistently through LinkedIn will reflect this. Yes, entrepreneurial spirit and insights into business and life, but very much nuanced with carefully crafted positioning. He will not be out there pumping the air and motivating and getting everybody fired up. He will be very much more thoughtful in the way he goes about it, a lot more strategic. Now, you can love that, or you can think, well, that's not really me. Finding your level. And there's no right or wrong. And there are, I guess, spectrum or spectra for this. There will be a spectrum from being very, very quiet, very reflective, all the way through to being right up there with the biggest kind of fired up, overwired, over caffeinated kind of sort of motivational speakers who are just all about the let's go out and kick it down and this, that, and the other. Somewhere on that spectrum you will find comfort. Somewhere on that spectrum you'll find you, and so your brand needs to reflect that. That is absolutely vital. And the reason it's vital is not that you can't play a part. It's not that you couldn't in the short term act out a role, but sustaining it is going to be way too tiring. It's going to burn too much energy, and you won't in the longer term enjoy it. So being your authentic self in your personal brand is absolutely key, because you can live in those shoes. You can work through that persona, and that is the one that's going to work with you. And of course, at the far end of the spectrum away from Stephen is Gary Vee's very energetic, no nonsense style, again, coming through instantly recognizable in the posts and the videos that he shares. So when you've kind of figured out the values, when you've kind of figured out what is my style, what are the kind of is the essence, if you like, of the tone of voice with which I'm going to do things, then it's about actually starting to work on your social media profile. So we all have a profile on social media, whether we've thought about it, whether we've crafted it or not. It is about focusing on the social networks and making the right choice where your target audience is most active. I always find myself using the phrase, it's much easier to be where they are than to try and drag them kicking and screaming into your playground. So if you're very active on TikTok, but your audience is on Twitter, or if you're really, really up for creating an Instagram profile, but everybody who is relevant to you is actually in LinkedIn, it is far better to work where your audience already is. So it's almost like you might have to swallow hard and think, okay, that is where I'm going to play. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to exclude the others, but it just means I'm going to focus my priority areas in the places where my audience are. So, of course, it goes without saying, LinkedIn, ideal for business to business, if that is where your network and where your influence, you have this desire to grow. Whereas Instagram, if you're in some kind of visual industry, obviously a lot of people listening to this, you're going to be potentially creatives, you're going to be marketers. It may well be that Instagram, because of the stuff you're creating or the products and services that you're working with, Instagram could be a great opportunity for you. And obviously a lot of others are available too. So you start really by creating what we would call a compelling bio. So this is your biography. This is your kind of elevator pitch digitally. And the elevator pitch is kind of in that moment between floors. You get trapped in an elevator with somebody and they say, oh, hey, what is it you do? And you've got those few seconds to capture their attention and whet their appetite. That's what you're looking to do here with your bio, using keywords and highlighting what makes you unique. Use all of the characters, all the space, all the links available, and make sure you've got a professional picture that is instantly identifiable as you. And that picture should and probably could transform your interactions with your target audience, and it needs to be consistent across all of the platforms that you have chosen or that you potentially will use in the future. It needs to be high quality, needs to be friendly. It doesn't necessarily have to be smiling. I mean, again, it has to be around your brand personality, the personality that you're looking to convey. So maybe it is more Stephen Bartlett, maybe it is more Gary Vee, or something in between. Find a look that suits. Make sure as well that you're very consistent in the color schemes, the clothes that you're wearing. I mean, if you take, for example, a photo when you're on holiday, or somebody takes a photo of you and you happen to be wearing beachwear or something like that, and your audience then doesn't see you in beachwear when they actually engage with you, well, there's a little bit of confusion there. You often see as well bios where people are wearing sunglasses, or where they look completely out of context. Make sure that it is reflective of your personal brand. It is the real kind of, it's your brand, it's your logo. Your face has got to be instantly recognizable, and don't have multiple people in it. Again, a lot of people sort of are there either with their partner or with somebody significant. It's like, no, this is about you. This is your moment to shine and be instantly identifiable. So make sure it is very clearly you. And you can, of course, consider removing the background if you want a really polished kind of look. But again, it is based around your style to optimize your profile. And in some of the social networks, you will have obviously places like LinkedIn, and on Facebook, you have what we call the cover image. Now, this is your probably most valuable digital real estate. This is where you can convey the key brand messages that you have. So your cover image is the thing that sits alongside your bio thumbnail image of you. A lot of people will be using this to potentially promote your latest course, maybe your brand, your latest book. That's what Gary Vee typically does. His YouTube cover, when I checked it last, was promoting his latest book. Stephen Bartlett uses his LinkedIn profile to showcase really clear and concise summaries of strategic links, should we say, to the various ventures that he has. So he's building a community, he has a new course, he's looking to do a particular initiative or project, or he's investing in something very specific. That will be on the cover image. And the cover image, of course, is something you can change up and change out as you feel the storytelling needs to be told. So if there are particular things that you want to showcase and highlight, maybe for a defined period of time, think of your cover image almost as like your little mini personal brand campaign. It is something you can play out quite a bit. And if you have your own personal website, which obviously we're talking social media here, but if you have your own website, again, make sure there's a consistency of color, tone of voice, and style. Almost as you would in your professional life, create some very simple little brand guidelines for yourself, your personal brand guidelines, so that everything that you do, everything that you convey is super consistent. In whatever channel, in whichever way that you find your audience engaging with you. So you've got your thumbnail, you've got your bio, you've got your cover image, you've kind of set up and optimized your profile, your description of your bio and all the value that you're going to bring is all nicely set up. So that's what we might call our stock content. And now we've got to think about our flow content. And as the name suggests, this is your publishing of posts, the publishing of your videos, the publishing of your podcasts or your webinars, or whatever it is that you are going to be using to convey your personal brand messages. And for most of us, it is going to be sharing our expertise or our specialisms. And even though you might be starting out on your career, there will be things that you are doing, things that you are really passionate about or really good at, or maybe you're challenging the way that it's been done before. Any kind of value that you're going to be bringing, and it doesn't have to be 100% correct, doesn't have to be absolutely up there with the great thought leaders of our time. If you're adding value to your audience, now is the time to be sharing that expertise. So this could be valuable insights and tips related to your industry, for example. Stephen Bartlett, again, using him as an example, he shares business and life advice through his podcast and then short forms that content on his social media, teases out the latest episode, for example. Committing to posting really high quality, consistent content is the key here. So you've got to be really, really clear to yourself what forms you are most comfortable with, because for some of us, it's writing articles. Some of us very happy you to be recording videos. Some of us, maybe we don't want to be seen, but we don't mind being heard. That's podcasts. Or maybe we're all about the data and the evidence. So maybe even infographics could be the way that we build our brand and we're seen as the go-to for reliable background research and summaries that can help people to make great decisions. But it is about telling authentic stories. People need to know the backstory. They need to know, why you're sharing this with me. Why are you so passionate about this particular topic? A great example, obviously, is from Gary Vee. If you've been following him, he will often talk about his entrepreneurial journey. If you follow a lot of his content, you will know the story intimately because he's so consistent that that is the foundation from which he then gives you all the very latest trending topics and tips. And so relatable stories and experiences will allow you to humanize your personal brand. You may be thinking, well, I am human. Of course I'm human. But until people get to know the backstory, it's very hard to necessarily relate to an individual who they might not know particularly well in the real world. So this is the opportunity to figure out that story. Maybe you use things like ChatGPT to help you with summarizing what might be a long journey. If you've been around the block a few times, like I have, there's often a lot of things that you could say, but using AI to help you kind of stream it down, maybe writing for a very, very specific niche within your target audience could definitely help you to, really, really kind of get that clarity that we've been talking about. And if, of course, you're using content on other platforms, you can repurpose it here in social to affect your personal brand. So you can adapt your content, obviously, for different social networks to maximize the reach. Gary Vee is very, very much a past master, at least his team is now, for repurposing clips from his vlogs and his podcasts. So you will see a lot of short form content. And of course, because most of us have got a day job, most of us have got time commitments in personal and professional life, we want to make sure that we're really leveraging the most out of every single piece of content. So think about repurposing what you've already got. You don't have to be making a huge amount of original new content. You've probably already got a lot of stuff that you've published, either through building a portfolio or a CV or doing market research within your industry, or literally if you're a studier and a learner, I know a lot of you are obviously learning on a journey right now. What are you finding in your journey? I mean, because a lot of that stuff, a lot of that personal portfolio that you're creating and your reflections on how the market is, how the world is moving, some of the macro stuff, some of the micro stuff in your industry, all of that stuff can be repurposed as content around your personal brand. You'll be amazed how interested people will be. And you could be sat there thinking, really? That doesn't sound like it's hugely valuable. It is. Why do you think stealth kind of documentaries and fly on the wall kind of documentaries have entertained us for so many decades? It's because people are curious, people are just inquisitive, people want to know what's going on, but they don't necessarily have the time to find out for themselves. So this is where you can be a very good social media citizen by helping them with that. And experimenting with different formats. I mean, diversify your content with videos, images, text posts, live streams, Instagram Reels and Stories. These are all the very popular formats right now. But I think, again, aligning with your personal brand, you've got to really decide and almost make a decision where you're going to spend the most of your time or most of your focus. The question I always kind of challenge people with when I'm talking to them about this topic is, are you TV or radio? In other words, if you're more of a radio host, you're much more about audio. But if you're more of a TV presenter, you're much more about video than audio. So find a space where you feel most comfortable, because again, sustaining this effort is going to be much easier if you're playing where you are most comfortable. So that is probably not to exclude the other things and the other options, but because most of us are pretty squeezed for time right now, investing where you're actually most comfortable, either as a radio host or a TV presenter. They're very, very different styles. And if you can imagine, your favorite TV presenter or your favorite radio show, those people are very good at what they do, but it's because they specialize in one particular medium and they probably become experts in that medium over time. And then once you get comfortable in there, then it's about thinking if you would be willing to push the boundaries just that little bit further. I'm going to use the word now in terms of personal branding. I'm going to use the word live. Now, that one can often strike fear into people who haven't done this before, but trust me, a little dipping your toe in the water, just a little and often, can really help to build confidence. And this is where you can change the game. This is where you can take things to the whole next level. So if you are looking potentially to become a thought leader, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in the future, if you're looking to become or establish yourself as a micro influencer or even a macro influencer, then hosting live sessions or webinars is a surefire way to get real-time engagement with your audience. So things like Instagram Live or LinkedIn events, you can host Q&A sessions, webinars, discussions on trending topics. Gary Vee will often host live sessions on Instagram, for example, and this provides direct value to the audience in a live setting at the same time as fostering interaction. So if you happen to be quite fond of doing presentations, well, why not just do a live presentation on a particular topic that you've researched? Again, you'll be amazed how many people will be interested and curious in what you're willing to share. Collaborating with others, if you don't feel quite confident enough to do that, co-creating content or appearing maybe as a guest on somebody else's podcast or webinar to expand your reach, and then using that content, short form clipping it so that you can then reuse it, repurpose it, and obviously be a great citizen to that host of that other podcast or webinar. Or maybe partnering with other micro influencers or peers who share similar values and target audiences to you. It is about, when you're building the brand on social media, it is about obviously content creation, but it's also about thinking carefully, who can I actually get value from as well by working with them? I might want to do some stuff of my own, but I also want to be doing stuff with others because they've got network. Maybe it's not a massive network, but that doesn't matter. You can go 10x, 100x in terms of your reach by just collaborating with others. So building your personal brand through social media can be done with the help of other people. So think carefully about whose shows you'd like to be on, or who you'd like to be in conversation with, or who you'd like to invite to interview. Doesn't have to be live. I'm pushing the boundary here by saying live, of course. It doesn't have to be live, but that conversation is live in itself. And then you record it, and then you've got content you can repurpose for a long time into the future. Some of my most popular content was recorded a year, maybe even 2 years ago, and it's still highly relevant and valuable for my audience. So it's still being clipped and short cropped into reels and YouTube shorts right now. So there's a lot of opportunity here to get really, really optimizing the content that you have. And this is going to help you to grow your audience. I mean, posting consistently, this kind of stuff, maybe sticking to a regular posting schedule as well to keep your audience engaged. I mean, most successful personal brands post at least once per day. How can you do that? Well, you can schedule the posts ahead, book them. Maybe if you're working 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, maybe spend a little bit of time at the weekend. You're going to get the value of this stuff going out. But of course, it isn't just about posting. It's also about watching what happens. And if you've got some content out there, you need to be available. So making sure you've got notifications switched on so that you can see whenever anybody is then responding to your posts, because that engagement backwards, we know how the algorithms work. And the more you engage on a human to human level in social media, the more benefit you're going to see. Your rankings of your content will go up. We know that, but also the profile that you have in your audience's mind, that's also going to be enhanced. So it's really, really critical that, you stick to a regular schedule that works for you. And you can obviously then get those posts actually scheduled in advance, but be available to then respond. And publishing long form content, a lot of people miss out on this opportunity to make, great gains from long form content, particularly if you've got content that could go out as a podcast, for example. The most successful personal brands right now, everybody's got a podcast. They absolutely have. And so long form content on LinkedIn or maybe on YouTube, and then you can position yourself as a thought leader in your industry or in your target audience at the same time as clipping those short form clips to then put out on the social networks where you want to be promoting your positioning. Stephen Bartlett, again, coming back to those two examples, Stephen frequently shares long form posts and articles on LinkedIn, providing really in-depth insights into entrepreneurship and life lessons. And he will go off piste, he'll stay on target, on message. Sometimes he'll surprise, sometimes it'll be a shorter form, and then there'll be a longer form hidden away, maybe on his website or on the YouTube channel, to then go and do a deeper dive. So working out your audience journey, again, is a really key way of keeping them engaged and keeping that consistency both for you and for them. The engagement thing that I was talking about there is absolutely critical. You will not build a personal brand if you don't engage with your community. And remember, this is your community. Responding to comments, asking questions, participating in relevant conversations is a really, really significant way to show appreciation for the support that your followers are giving you. Say thank you. Be really genuinely grateful. Gary Vee, even though he has millions of followers, he's known for actively engaging, often responding directly to comments on Instagram and interacting with his community across all platforms on a personal basis. Yes, he's got a team, but a lot of the time you will see him, particularly when he's on flights, when he's on being driven between locations and stuff, he will be actually on his device and he will be interacting. And he always says, actually, and this is always an interesting one that I've picked up and thought about many, many times, he says that without that, you will not know what your target audience needs next. So he's always looking for those little nuances, those little shifts in conversation that are happening in the world, and not just assuming because you set your brand profile in a certain direction that that's going to still be relevant in a few months' time. So by engaging with your community, you can ask them if the content is right. You can ask them, hey, I'm looking to do a series on a particular topic, come the autumn or come, early next year. What would you guys be interested in me focusing on? Who would you like me to get on the show? Who would you like me to be, interviewing? What kind of things can I go and research for you? Being appreciative and asking those kind of deeper questions is a great way to build that engagement in the longer term. And you always have to be doing it, but you don't have to be doing it always. And this is the point. If you can be there as much as you can physically manage, it is much, much more than most people are doing. So your brand and your profile is going to be certainly outweighing anybody who is just literally posting and hoping. And that is definitely the way to do this. And of course, what you will be doing by increasing the engagement level there is you will be, by default, encouraging what we call UGC, user-generated content. Now, a lot of us, if we're doing influencer marketing, we know how significant this can be. This is sharing content created by your followers or fans, and this will help to both boost your brand's authenticity as well as at the same time building a stronger community. If people know you really do listen because you post stuff that they put on about the things that you care about, that will actually tie your audience into doing more of the same, doing more of the above. They are much more likely to share your content too if you're sharing theirs. So being a great social citizen in your social media accounts is a good way to encourage and boost up user-generated content. And you can encourage your audience to share their stories or experiences related to your content. So always end your content with a question mark rather than a full stop. It is, again, another great way of saying, actually, I'm really interested to hear what you guys think. Please share, please engage, please be part of my community. And if you have employees, if you have colleagues, if you have a network or a community already, leveraging their advocacy can really supercharge this in the early days if this is brand new for you. So encourage your team to share any content or engage with your posts, because this will definitely amplify your reach and tends to lend credibility to the posts that you're doing. The quicker you can fast track that, the better. And I always call this the tier one connections that we have, the people we can trust, the people we can rely on, our friends and colleagues and family. We do need, obviously, if we're going to be building a significant personal brand, to get out to tier two as soon as we can, those people that we don't know yet, and then out to tier three, which are the friends of the friends or the colleagues of the colleagues who we have no idea who they are. That's where we want to get to. But let's start at the beginning. Let's start at the core and engage an audience that you're already connected with. And again, you can then test out the styles of content, the topics that resonate, and obviously test out how comfortable you are with your personal branding as you've set it before then really turning up the volume control and actually then scaling out to a broader audience. And of course, this means you're going to have to refine your strategy as you go. So tracking the insights, always being on your own personal brand, really interested and curious to go deep into the analytics. I mean, all of the social networks have insights. We know that. If you've got a website that's feeding into or out of your social media, use native analytics tools to really understand what content is resonating with your audience. Pay attention not just to the number of views, but also the reach and the engagement, and also how that reach and engagement translates into follower growth. So if you're getting connections off a particular style of content or a particular topic, that's where you need to, I'll use the phrase, double down. That's where you need to actually go deeper in and then think, okay, I've now actually found there's a thread, there's a rich seam of gold here with this topic or this network or this style or this particular medium. I'm going to now, over the coming weeks, I'm going to focus on that, maybe to the detriment, maybe to the exclusion of everything else, and go deep in and see what happens. That's going to be absolutely crucial. And periodically conduct what we call a brand audit. Assess your online presence just to make sure you haven't drifted. There is a thing called strategic drift, and you might find that it happens even though you're not even aware it's happening. So you need to watch for consistency, and obviously then you can identify any areas where you think, I can improve that, or maybe I bring that a little bit more back on trend, or maybe I'm going to ask my audience for input onto what content they find most valuable, maybe put out some polls, surveys, or simply ask for comments. A lot of people are very willing to give comments if they're invited to. So yeah, just kind of think about that refining of your strategy as you go. And then you can adapt, obviously, your social media to the constantly evolving algorithms and stay informed about new features and adjust the strategy accordingly. The social networks, and again, that's what we're here predominantly to talk about today, they are constantly changing and evolving. You know, what was a particular ranking signal last week could be very different next week. So keep in touch with the social media experts in the particular channels that you've chosen, and then make sure you're experimenting with different content formats over time. We talked before about infographics and podcasts and short form videos. If those are, because they are right now, some of the really hot content formats, but if those are ones that maybe go out of favor, make sure you know what is coming next, because by doing that, you'll keep your audience engaged, and it does help you then understand what works best. Gary Vee, again, is another example. His content will span multiple formats, from quick tips on Instagram Reels to really in-depth podcasts on YouTube. And of course, the analytics will be feeding into a dashboard that I have no question at all that he will be looking at on a very regular basis and guiding and steering his team as to where they need to focus their attention. And remember, even if you have people doing your branding and your stuff for you, they also need guidance, because strategic drift can happen, and it's happening at an ever increasing rate. So you need to just keep aware of what's going on and really think of your dashboard of these feeds coming in almost as your radar, your personal branding radar, so that you can watch and then evolve and work where the trends actually go in time. Now, let's just say this is all working. Let's just say that everything is just beautifully set up. Your audience is engaging. You're getting more connections and followers. It's driving, a lot of interest, a lot of hooks. Everybody's, really aware of what you're doing, and you're getting great value and comments and lots of great reviews. What do you do next with your personal brand? Well, you could if you wanted to. And this is probably where you become some kind of influencer, maybe a micro influencer. Nothing wrong with that. That's the specialist influencer that we all know and love in our sectors. Maybe it could be time that you monetize your brand. Now, when I say the word monetize, not necessarily thinking about money, but we could be thinking about money. You could be offering consulting or coaching services by packaging your expertise into some paid offerings. Maybe create some courses or some ebooks. Maybe you create some individual paid membership communities like Stephen Bartlett does, for example, where you're actually bringing the material and the assets together. And then because you've created them, you've curated around a topic, maybe that topic has monetary value. Over time, you're going to be building these materials and these assets, and they do, in theory, have a value. So monetizing your personal brand can be done in that way, thinking about the assets and the values that they have. Maybe you pursue brand partnerships. I mean, as your personal influence grows, brands may approach you for sponsored content or affiliate marketing deals. Now, you could be thinking, really? Is that going to happen for me? Well, I can tell you certainly from my podcast, I get a lot of approaches now. Not everyone I'm going to say yes to, obviously, because everything needs to be on brand. But I get a lot of approaches for, brand partnerships, for guests to come on paid onto the podcast. So I'm currently going through a strategic audit for my podcast as to where I want to take that. So you will get to a point, and yes, okay, I've been doing that now for quite a while. I've got a lot of episodes now in the bank, but it is an opportunity as you grow, just by default, your brand will grow and these opportunities will spring out and give you, choices to make in the future. Now, you don't have to monetize, but you might want to. You might want to launch a subscription offering. You might want to create exclusive content or a community available to paying subscribers. I mean, platforms like Patreon or Substack make these things easy to implement. You can monetize, you can build from your audience. And if you've been providing value, how many times do you think I've said the word value? I haven't been counting, but it just feels I've said it a number of times in this particular talk. And so if you are providing value, people pay for value. So you can monetize or you can get a return. It doesn't have to be cash. It might be benefit in kind. It might be that you see a collaboration that just works. It doesn't necessarily mean money changes hands, but because of your personal branding, maybe some kind of collaboration works, and maybe that is your measure of success. Having those strategic goals is a really key thing. Set your desired outcome, set what you'd like to achieve by the end of this coming year. And then once you've set it, ease into this process of this personal branding, and you'll be very surprised, I'm sure, about how things will progress. And as you progress, highlight your achievements, share the journey. I mentioned my podcast and how successful for me that has become against what I expected it to be. It's way outperformed where I thought it would be in terms of my measures of success. And I'm very happy to share that. It's not about being shy about the accomplishments. It's not about being brash and, oh, look at me. It is about saying, actually, if anyone's interested, you could do this too. And so it's actually just role modeling what you're offering up to the world around you. And if you get an opportunity to speak at awards or engagements, or you have successful projects or particular campaigns, either at work or personally through your personal brand, these will enhance your credibility. Somebody like Gary Vee, will love him or hate him, he frequently shares his achievements, such as speaking at major events. And these kinds of things are accolades that reinforce his authority in the marketing world. It puts him right at the forefront of people you want to listen to, because he's clearly got the evidence proving that everything that he's doing, say everything, most things that he's doing, are actually playing out in reality in a successful way. So don't be shy about sharing accomplishments, but at the very least, share the journey. Both Stephen Bartlett and Gary Vee always talk about it's the process that you need to love, the process of personal branding and seeing your personal brand evolve and develop, both through social media, but other digital channels, and of course, consequently in the real world as well. And so seeing that journey play out is just a lovely, warm feeling for us as human beings, professionally, but also knowing that we're actually giving value, knowing that people are listening and that they care because we care. That is so, so important. So I just want to leave you now with a final kind of thought, a final reflection, is that building a strong personal brand does take time and consistency. Be patient. Focus on providing value to your audience. That word value comes through again loud and clear. That is what it's all about. Figure out your values and the specialisms that you can introduce into your personal brand. Engage with your community and stay true to your authentic self. That is absolutely clear and key for me. Being open and authentic and really honest both with yourself and your audience is totally, totally the way to do this. Personal branding isn't a one-time effort. You do have to do some one-time stuff like your biography and getting that photography right, maybe setting those personal brand guidelines, but it's a continuous process of refinement and engagement. And that is the kind of process that you're going to hopefully learn to love and enjoy. And that is the thing that will ensure you really do leverage your personal brand on social media.